Hey everyone, welcome back. Assuming you haven't been living under a rock, you've noticed this massive boost on social media of accounts showing videos of violent crime against white people in Europe and the United States. You've also seen images shared by anti white accounts showing blacks urinating on the grave of Austin Metcalf. Whether these images are real or AI isn't really the point. Someone went out of their way to show the content of their character and post it to social media. The point is, white people are being murdered and beaten all throughout the Western world, and the violence against us is very real. Just as real as this post to X by Cardi B. Wow, just freaking wow, disgusting, this is not justice. This is trying to make an example. Now, some of you are probably sitting there thinking, why do I give a fuck about what this rapper has to say? And the point isn't to give a fuck about her opinion here, because fuck her opinion here. The point is that post received 18 million views and 110,000 likes on X. She influences younger generations, and for better or for worse, obviously for worse, this entertainer who used to drug and rob men when she used to work as a stripper has one of the louder voices in America right now. And her audience has always been younger and more impressionable teens, and young adults. So I can't even begin to assume what her motivation or thought was behind that post to social media. Maybe she actually believes Carmelo Anthony, the savage that stabbed Austin Metcalf, is being unfairly made an example of. Maybe she believes bringing a knife to a track meet is perfectly reasonable and stabbing his peer to death is acceptable behavior. Or maybe the self-described Afro-Latina views the American justice system as systemically racist towards blacks who murder whites. Perhaps she felt compelled to post what she did in order to stay on brand with her social justice audience. Who knows? Who cares about what she actually said? Again, the biggest point to make here is the stripper, entertainer, rapper, New England Patriots football game attendee has the ears of millions and millions of people. Whether she authored this post or whether her PR person authored the post, part of her brand is outrage about the verdict of a convicted murderer. Regardless, we need to make sure her values aren't the template for values being shaped for and adopted by young people today. The simple fact, white people sat anxiously and patiently, hoping our justice system, modeled after European systems, wasn't going to somehow fuck this up, just shows how eroded our system is. Thankfully, the jury and the court got this verdict right. Not like that's any prize won for the family of Austin Metcalf. Austin Metcalf was taken from this world forever. Carmelo Anthony, on the other hand, will walk free again. So if there's any example being set here, Cardi B, it's a murderer has an opportunity to walk freely among us again. Not like that would somehow bother the former stripper turned entertainer who used to drug people and rob them. So, to get to the point of this episode, there are going to be very loud voices in favor of a completely fucked justice system that gives slaps on the wrist for violent people, and a justice system where we dish out harsh sentences for violent offenders. But what if I were to tell you that there is something far darker going on here, masked by this back and forth debate? That being, the violence we're seeing today against white people has been enabled on purpose. Violence against whites throughout the entire Western world. That includes America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. The violence against white people isn't just about killing white people. In fact, it's about erasing a way of life, culture, and thousands of years of legacy of the people who built the modern world over and over again. If you want to kill a culture, you have to kill its people, or do things to significantly reduce the white populations throughout Western civilization. Murder isn't the only way to do this. Replacement migration has been a tactic employed fully over the last decade plus, bringing in people who have no problem attempting to decapitate a man in Belfast. Other examples may be encouraging women to choose abortion, encouraging women to dedicate their prime childbearing years to climbing the corporate ladder are other ways to reduce the population of whites. And then you would, of course, find leaders that defend the criminals and accuse the victim of racism while he bleeds out in handcuffs in the UK. You would create programs and companies that are committed to hiring plenty of women and minorities. Women, because again, the more time they spend working, the less time they spend having children. You would create women empowering women movements dedicated to mutually pressuring women to focus on anything but family for as long as possible. You would hire minorities in order to keep white men from working, and that will create terrible socioeconomic situations for whites, driving down white fertility. You would seek to legalize drugs like marijuana and then promote that drug use in shows and movies, targeting your kids at a young age. The same way in the late 90s and early 2000s, you had raunchy teen movies where every other scene was a keg stand and I can't wait to go to college and get drunk every day. You would package all of this together and sell it to the masses as culture. And it has worked really, really well for a very, very long time. Everything you're seeing is manufactured intentionally with the hopes of achieving a desired outcome. And that desired outcome is white erasure by any means. Now, I don't mean literally killing every single white person. What I'm talking about is the erasure of our Western cultures that combined make up the white world. We are the most threatening obstacle that can stand in the way of the new world being built. Our culture has been the strongest in modern times. Now, that isn't to say other cultures aren't strong and significant as well. It is just in our European DNA to fight back against bad things at all odds. And we have always done so in a collective way. They don't topple statues of George Washington and Christopher Columbus because they're mad about slavery. They knock down those statues because of the excellence those men represent. They don't want you to feel passionate about exploring the world. They don't want you to feel like a group of farmers with pitchforks can come together and defeat an empire in the 13 colonies. They don't want you to feel connected to that at all. They want you to feel alone, unattached, disconnected from your past. Because if you drew from the well of the past, there would be no way you'd ever drink from the well of this fucked up future. Now, I'm not saying don't embrace change. What I'm saying is don't compromise who you are just for the sake of change. On top of all of this, you need to be wary of those throughout the Western world that offer a quick solution to violent crime and violent migrant crime. You also need to be wary of parties that take up these issues, and even more wary of the social media accounts. Why them? They're the accounts driving out the vote. Let me explain. I'm going to use Pride as an example. The men and women's sports debate and LGBTQ everything was a huge theme during the Biden administration. You saw plenty of right-wing accounts rightfully pushing back against this. Then October 7th happens. You start hearing phrases like gays for Gaza, queers for Palestine, and those right-wing accounts began drawing an association between Hamas and LGBTQ. The idea ultimately was to show this urgency that if you don't go after Hamas, the Pride movement in America will win. Support Israel to stop gays for Gaza. Get the terrorists or they're going to trans your kids. Then out of the other side of their mouth, they would say we need to get Hamas because they're going to push gays off roofs. You'd see demonstrators with the Palestinian and Pride flags, showing some sign of resistance. I think many of these protesters were paid to combine the symbols to drive the nation to support Israel. Look at these chickens for KFC. If they only knew what they were supporting. Don't fall for these tactics. Traditionally, in American politics, the right has been the Israel War and Border Security Party, and the left has leaned more towards quote-unquote marginalized groups, anti-war sentiment, and a loose border security policy. That changed in the United States somewhat today, but it is still very hard to find anyone that truly takes a stance stating no war, no migration, and Israel does not dictate terms to us. Where is that person? On the right, if you want a closed border, there are plenty who will give that to you. Hell, they'll even talk about mass deportation. But you're most certainly giving infinity dollars to Israel. On the left, you'll find plenty who oppose war with Iran. But you won't get no war with Iran without DEI judges that let out violent criminals, amnesty, and LGBTQ everything. It's almost like this partisan system was designed this way on purpose. The lesser of two evils system. But again, be cautious about the accounts you're seeing pushing all of the videos of violence against whites calling for mass deportation. Some of them are genuine. Some of them, however, want to use this issue to get you on board with other issues that are not within your best interests. Be careful as well with the accounts posting anti-white propaganda. Who's to say whether those accounts actually believe anything they're posting? They would love to trigger you and see you burn down a city or torch a town just like BLM. They themselves then will feel vindicated for their violence, and the courts will most certainly hand you harsher sentences than any paid BLM protester received. Earlier, I said the violence against whites is allowed to happen. It's enabled, and the migrants are not being deported intentionally, and violent criminals are constantly let out. The left will bring them in to topple our nation, and the right will offer false promises to fight it. The truth is, the right doesn't want this problem to go away anytime soon either. Why would they fix it in America? What would the right campaign on in 2028 if they didn't have the promise of mass deportations to sell to the American people? If your government fixes the issue, then they have nothing to campaign on next cycle. Mass deportations to the white right is the equivalent to expanded welfare benefits to the black left. The left always promises black people the same package of benefits. The right is going to offer white people mass deportations in the same way. It's to gatekeep you, keep you in the conservative movement that is completely occupied by Israel. A vote for mass deportation is a vote for Israel. Then Israel bombs its neighbors, more migrants come here, and more of your white sons and daughters are killed. Anyone telling you on the right to stick with conservatism is telling you to stay in that cycle of death. If anyone in media, your favorite podcaster, a politician is telling you to stay within this conservative movement, even if rebranded something different than MAGA, they are selling you the same shit with a different label. It's just off with the red hat and on with the blue. But keep the same multicultural policies and the result is more dead white people. Don't fall for it anymore. If they wanted to fix it, they would. Or they'd ask us for our participation in doing so. They never ask us for anything, though, except for our consent to send them to Washington for a term. It is up to white people to make sure there are no more Austin Metcalfs by blacks or victims of migrant violence throughout the Western world. All sides of the aisle are focused on our replacement. Lastly, this violence is allowed to persist because they want to create a crisis so bad that people will consent to anything just to make it stop. And of course, whatever that system will be, most certainly coupled with AI and all sorts of digital monitors, isn't going to be good for us at all. Just remember COVID, create the virus, and then sell the cure. Realizing our racial majority in all of our European heritage nations is the cure. Let's start working on that. Thank you for tuning in.